On tonight's Cover One Buffalo podcast, powered by the BetUS Network, we are joined by Kent Swanson from KC Sports Network. But first, our guys, Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia Worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron. Aaron, I can't believe it's Chiefs week. I can't believe it. It's wild that it's already week 11.
I hate it, actually. It's my least favorite week of the year.
It's the worst. It's the worst.
Also, it's cold in Buffalo now, dude. It's the Studio
snap.
Z here in Tonawanda, New York. Pretty cold. That's why I got the Buffalo on the Brain beanie because I'm trying to stay warm here. Cup of tea. Hate this time of year, man. Jeez.
Yeah, your sign over your shoulder is accurate. It's just nothing good that comes to this week. I hate it. Nope. I had a little bit of a rant on another appearance, and we'll talk about it later in the show, but this game really matters, but it also doesn't really matter.
Sure.
And the seeding matters and the confidence matters, but if you win this game and then lose in the playoffs, no one's going to care. If you've
done it before, actually, nobody cares.
Yeah, correct. We've actually done it multiple times. Yeah. If you lose this game and then win in the playoffs, no one's going to care. It matters, but it doesn't. It's just so weird.
But before we bring on our guests, some really good news for Bills Mafia outside of this week with Matt Milano actually activating his practice window and opening up the Matt Milano practice window. We have talked about this in the Here to Help a few times, Greg, of we are getting help. Matt Milano will be back. But even I was thinking this is a Christmas or later thing, maybe a couple weeks before the playoffs, we could get him back. This is great news for Bills Mafia that this could be here around the night with Keon Coleman coming back, maybe.
Yeah. So obviously we'll talk with Kent in just a second on the guys who may or may not be available this week, but the Matt Milano news is significantly ahead of what I had thought. I thought into December at the very earliest, and it's kind of silly. There's actually only one game technically in the month of November. The next game after the bye week is December 1st, so it technically is going to be December, but the fact that it right now very much looks like the ramp up is going to be there for him to make his debut in week 13 against San Francisco, coming off of the bye with 6 regular season games to ramp up. And I say debut in the sense of I think we see him on the field probably in a limited capacity in a rotation. Dorian Williams has done great. There's a really nice luxury, but significantly ahead of where we expected it to be. So that's a really cool one, the confirmation that, hey, he's back and ready to go. I also know that, somebody in the Discord channel had made the reference of hey, I kind of like it that he's been out with a bicep while his legs are good versus a healthy upper body, but needs to get his lower body in shape. At least that allowed him to be cardiovascular shape. It's not football shape. It's not hitting shape. It's not that toughness of being able to be prepped for the hits and the contact that's there. That still will take, there's only one way to do that. But I like that he's been able to be in good cardio shape up to this point. So really pleasant surprise. I did not expect that to get opened up this week. Obviously same idea. It sounds like Keon Coleman will miss obviously it's already been confirmed he'll miss the Chiefs game, but it sounds like he'll be back right after the bye as well. Lots of things trending the right direction here for what we're looking at.
All I wanted for Christmas was to see Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano play football together. That's all I wanted. That's a simple request from just a simple nice guy, right? Yeah, come on, Santa.
All right, guys, without further ado, you know him. He's been here with us before. Our man, Kent Swanson from the KC Sports Network. Kent, how we doing?
Hey, look, this is one of my favorite weeks of the year because I get to talk to you guys. So Casey is saying, guys, we all come in. I know Maddie comes on with Anthony. It's just this is great, man. I always love talking to you guys. The bromance is real with me and you guys. I love y'all, and I love what you guys do, and so much respect. I'm glad Bills Mafia has you guys because, I think very highly of all the stuff that you guys are doing. So I love coming on with you guys. Excited to talk about this game.
You guys are like the us of an alternative universe, right?
Yeah.
Like a truly independent sports network for the fans. And that is super cool. And that's why we love having you guys all across the network. It's just a perfect fit.
Yeah, man, I love doing this with you guys. So I look forward to our conversations every year, and you know, I get to wax poetic about Josh Allen, my second favorite quarterback in the National Football League too. So
So first, before we get into the matchup itself, and I'm sure you feel relatively similar to my opening comments on like this game matters, but it only matters so much. Like both of our franchises are in a phase where the regular season is an exercise. It's not. It's no longer the goal. Like it's just part of the journey to get to the part that matters. And obviously, much different endings for our franchises the last couple of years. Where is the mindset? Because there's an analogy that always stuck with me from history and previous battles. They talk about the guys who go into battle with Alexander the Great and how after so many victories, regardless of the who was outnumbered, what the situation was, how ridiculous it seemed, you felt invincible. And that like, hey, we're on this side and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they have. It doesn't matter how scary their troops look. It doesn't matter how ferocious this opponent appears. We're on this side, and that means we're going to win. Like there have been so many wild things, and I don't know anything more wild than the block field goal at the end of this last game.
yeah.
It's just the Leo Chenals of the world have to feel like a greater version of themselves because no, I'm part of this team.
Yeah, I think there's definitely like like the championship DNA kind of thing that people talk about. Like, here's the thing, man. There a big piece of this team is the 2022 draft class. It's the Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, Brian Cook, Leo Chenal, Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson class, right? Like this group is like a big piece of why this team is, had success in this second wave. They traded Tyreek Hill to get all these draft picks and stuff like that. That team knows nothing less than winning a Super Bowl in their entire career. And so like there's this group of guys that has like this confidence to them and this understanding, this belief. They know what it takes to win because it's the only thing that they really know how to do. And like I think you see that in the margins of these games that they've been in close, right? Like that's where you've seen some of these things kind of show up. This team loves playing these kind of like close games. They're not it. Aaron said it best. There's no style points right now for this team. And like that's what it feels like. Is just like they're going out, they're not blowing teams out and they're not always playing consistent but they're coming out on top in these close games in the margin. It's in these little details, just knowing how to win these football games. This last week felt like the first time, like the previous 8, you felt like, yeah, they probably deserved to win still. This last one, it didn't really feel like they deserved to win, but to their credit, they still made a play that was, planned. That was, they knew that they had a chance to do it. They believed heading into that play that they were going to be able to get it on, and they had the right guy to kind of do it. So I don't know, man. It's been wild to watch this team, and they're just how they're going about business this season. It's just it speaks to just kind of like what you said, just the confidence going into these games for these guys.
That block field goal pissed off every single group DM and text message group that I have. We were like, it was all like, oh, Casey's about to lose it. And then it was just like, oh, resounding.
It wasn't necessarily obviously like we want it because it helps us strategically and things like that.
Yeah.
But it took like just the tiniest bit of shine off of this game because the loss would have meant like, hey, no matter what, the winner of this game is the 1 seed. And it just kind of put that in play that like, hey, of course, like they're still going to try to win. We're still going to hope that at some point somebody else trips you guys up and it makes it the tiebreaker would matter. And like nothing actually changes in the grand scheme of things, but it would have put it in play now. It would have put it in play immediately. And just it took that tiny little bit of shine off of here that, well, even if we win, you still got to wait for some other domino to happen. And it took that little chip out of play.
Yeah, and like I don't think walking into that game against Denver, Chiefs fans were going, "This is such a pivotal moment in the Chiefs season," right? But then they go out and they don't play very well, and offensively they struggle. Mahomes has some misses, uncharacteristic misses, and then having that blocked field goal, you just look back and you go, "That was huge. That was pivotal in their pursuit of the 1 seed, which is what Buffalo and Kansas City are ultimately going for." I think it might be a 2-team race at this point, honestly. I think it's kind of turning into
those
that
AFC North games left. It's going to be really tough for anybody else to get into it.
It's going to be a bloodbath over there, and like I'm not buying the Steelers. I'm buying the Steelers as a playoff team. I'm not buying them as a true tier contender for the AFC. But looking back on it, like it does change. It changes the math significantly, and it's wild to say. And I don't say this lightly. But if the Chiefs somehow go into Buffalo and win this game, they have a 4-game lead or 3.5-game lead essentially on the Bills. They have a 3.5-game lead on the Ravens for the 1 seed. There's a chance that Netflix game in week 16 or week 17 against the Steelers doesn't even matter. It might be Carson Wentz playing in that game, which would be insane. But
it would bring up some wild optionality, like some strategic choices of because even if you get to that point, and again, we'll get into the actual game itself here.
That happens.
But exactly.
If you get to that, because not only are you talking about a game where now maybe it's, so does like Roger make a phone call like, hey, why don't you guys rest people in that Saturday game beforehand and then give us a little something on this Christmas game? Because it's going to be so weird because you can't shut it down with 3 weeks to go and have the bye and then have a playoff game where no one's been competitive for a month. It's going to cause some weird strategic choices.
And that's I
think it's likely that's going to come up anyways here. Like I think, like again, I hope the Bills win and catch them and have those options themselves. But there's an awful lot of scenarios where you're still in that position, even if it's the other way around, even if it's as a 2 seed and you're sitting there like, hey, you could have a 6-game lead in the AFC West and be like, I guess we're just gonna kind of shut it down.
And let's acknowledge this is a big if here too. Like I don't want to I know there's a lot of confidence here in Kansas City and this team keeps winning and they keep finding ways to win and all that stuff. But it's a big if still. Like this is like a potential scenario. Like I don't think anybody's walking around feeling like this is going to happen. But I do think that this big game against Buffalo is kind of an opportunity that if this game goes the way it goes, there is a very the conversation starts happening very quickly about, okay, so are the Panthers knocking them off next week? Are the Raiders knocking them off next week? And
the rest of the schedule, there's not a lot of obvious
Chargers, maybe
the one. But you honestly, it's Chargers and Broncos. That's it. Yeah. That. Otherwise, it would be something like, holy crap! How did the Panthers pull that up? Or it becomes Cleveland just a pure trap Ravens, game of overlooking. It's just a pure you guys aren't the Ravens, right?
No.
It's just you guys don't drop those obvious gimme games, and then you turn into the strategic piece of, do you take the Patriots route where you try to run it and you'd be like, hey, let's try to make history and let's try to do something special? Do you take the Colts path where they kind of shut it down after week 14, even at 14-0, and like, no, we got to look at it, and you all of a sudden again have to make weird choices that come into play.
Yeah. And but I think what the root of it is, right, is we're both of these teams, like you kind of said, hey, look, that's a problem for another day if the Chiefs can take care of business here. And if they don't, look, they got a lot of football to play. The pressure's on for the rest of the season, and that's not necessarily a bad thing either, right? I think it just the context of that for both teams, I think, is what's so fascinating to me because if the Chiefs win this game, they're in remarkable position. If the Bills win this game, there's a lot on the line for both teams for the remainder of the season, essentially. And so I think it's going to be that's what's so fascinating to me about this game, and I know you guys have been talking about it. The same thing for me. It's you guys saying hey, look, it's a regular season game. It's a big regular season game and there's a lot at stake, but at the same time, it's all about that postseason, right? Like you guys have been talking about. And it's so true. Both of these franchises are in this era, in this mode, are in this tier of teams that have been through a lot of playoff games over the last few years, that have been to, at least, both of these teams have both been to the AFC Championship game. They've been in these high stakes games, and that's ultimately what it comes down to. So this is a tune-up in preparation of acknowledging that these two teams are probably lining up against each other at some point. I think these are the two best teams in the AFC. And, so how do you play this one? How do you, what do you show? What don't you show? Andy Reid has historically tried not to show too much against teams that he anticipates playing later in the AFC
we
side
had
of the
that
playoffs.
discussion in the Discord earlier today in my exact example, because people are like, no, you got to do everything you can to win. I said, do you think Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo are showing all their best cards in this hand? Like, do you think we're going to see the best that Spags has to show in this? And that doesn't mean you're throwing a game. That doesn't mean you're not trying to win. It just means, hey, we're going to put together a specific game plan, and we're going to execute that game plan to the best of our ability to try to win a game. But that game plan it's not a kitchen sink game. Like playoffs are kitchen sink games. Playoffs are, you throw everything you have at them. This is the best we got. That's not going to be what we see from either team on Sunday, which makes it a little weird to figure out, like, okay, what does then the result in either direction? What does that mean when we know everybody was holding just a little bit back for the very likely rematch?
Well, and like, okay, so using the example of like how this manifested, the Chiefs did not move Chris Jones at all against the Cincinnati Bengals the first time that they matched up a couple years ago. By the way, it's been like 600 days or something like that since the Cincinnati Bengals would beat the Kansas City Chiefs. So
just throwing that in there, just throwing that out there in case anybody wasn't sure.
My ire does not go towards you guys. I love y'all. I love those Mafia, but Bengals, the jungle, man. I got some beef out there.
They can get it.
They can get it. It's like all your tweets about the Dolphins or my tweets about the Bengals.
Yeah. It's just a little fun bit of pettiness. It's just I can't help myself.
I love it.
Oh, let me twist it a little bit.
I'm really, that's where I get them. Like the AFC North can catch these hands, man. But I think it can set the table, right? Like they can have some stuff, and both these teams can have some stuff in for the tendency breaker, for the counterpunch, in the AFC. Like put this on tape today, and then it's a post this week, and it's a post corner in the AFC Championship game.
Somebody went the other direction and said, no. You guys are doing it all wrong. I want to run all the trick plays in this game. So then they have no idea which ones. Actually, I want to run all the trick plays right now. And then they got to try to figure out, wait, which one of those was real? That was a sneaky one.
I love it. No, hey, why not? Zig where they zag. Just try something else different here.
Into this game, let's get into the defensive side of the ball, because this has been keeping me up since the end of the game on Sunday, is having to deal with Steve Spagnuolo in this defense. Even if he's not throwing the kitchen sink at you, this is a defense that is just a terror to deal with. Tell me a little bit, kind of, what is Spagnuolo doing in this sort of iteration of the Chiefs that is different than the Steve Spagnuolo that people knew from years ago? Because he's so progressive in how he disguises coverage. Like we talk about it all the time on this show. Sean McDermott's another one that so progressive in bringing nickel into the league and disguising coverage. But Spagnuolo is above that and probably the number one defensive coordinator in the NFL and has been for a while. And the marriage with him and Andy Reid is just a special one. What is he doing right now to the modern NFL offenses to give us such a fit?
Yeah, a couple of things. So first off, there's a fun story from the Chiefs right after the Eagles Super Bowl, where it was a couple of rookie defensive backs, and they were defensive backs. Sorry, a couple of rookie defensive players. No, it's okay. And they were both talking about how they just got done winning the Super Bowl, and they both said, we don't even know the defense. Like, wait until we do. And so that year was a lot of static too. They just played a lot of static coverage and just tried to, keep a lid on things, but weren't really able to get too exotic. But what you see now is, that group of players that we just got done talking about, like I said, like that 2022 class, they don't really know much different. They played in 2 Super Bowls in their career, and they're on, this team now. The ground zero for this team every year now is a lot higher in terms of just like how they're, what they're able to install, how much chemistry they have in the back seven of that defense. And so like the Rolodex is bigger earlier in the year and is more diverse over the course of the season because Steve Spagnuolo has so much trust in that back seven because there's so much continuity in that group. And so, Steve Spagnuolo trusts that group immensely to be able to, throw a bunch of disguise coverage. He'll drop Drew Tranquil, a linebacker, into a deep half.
Yeah.
Like they are moving pieces. They are
has lined up at every position in the front seven.
Yeah, I know Leo Chanel is getting love for the block, but he's like one of my favorite players on this team right now because they'll play him essentially as a 3 tech, and he will walk a guard back, and he will disrupt a play. Like they are weaponizing Leo Chanel on early downs. They're having a lot of success on early down stopping the run, and then allowing Steve Spagnuolo to get into some of these exotic pressures, and moving this back seven around that has a lot of continuity. Now, I will say this is a big test for the Chiefs because Jalen Watson was playing fantastic football for them as their cornerback too.
Mm-hmm.
And Jalen Watson's hurt.
Yeah.
And so now they've rolled to a guy named, I don't know if you know the name Najee Johnson. And if you don't,
also in that 2022 class though, right?
Also in that 22 draft class, has suffered some injuries, so has not been able to play as much, and was looking like he was going to be potentially a starter last year because last year before he got hurt. And it's been very up and down for him. And, the safeties have had to help a little bit more with the cornerbacks, specifically last week. And like they're having to, because the cornerbacks, Najee was not covering as consistently. So can Steve Spagnuolo get into his bag as much because of the cornerback issues, that they have outside of a Trent McDuffie? By the way, Trent McDuffie's having to kind of be essentially an outside corner now. Yeah. And there are certain types of players that can give him fits because he's got very tiny baby arms.
Yeah, all of our players like that are hurt right now. So,
yeah, this would have been a great Keon Coleman game outside. Line him up against there and see what happens. So, but yeah, I think it's just that back seven's got so much continuity chemistry that they're able to just really mix things up. They're able to get real weird with it. Like that's a big piece of why they've been able to have a lot of success.
Yeah, and it seems like I know you've already talked about it now a couple times with this 2022 class. It was a question I just kind of want to ask you because the Bills are sort of in a bit of a transformation from that early. We got Stephon Diggs, we had Jordan Porter, Micah Hyde, all these names that Buffalo fans are familiar with. And we're in this kind of second, this was supposed to be a rebuild year, kind of like the Chiefs had, where they still had success in a year they were rebuilding. We don't have the plethora of draft picks. We have some 5th rounders and stuff like that, but Brandon Beane has done a good job over the last couple of years of adding to this team. But specifically for you guys, in the way that the Chiefs have changed in how they win and the ways that they're winning the last couple of years really harkens back to that 2022 class. Like, can you talk about sort of what the fan base, in terms of, you lose a Tyreek Hill, you get these draft picks, you take a bunch of guys that these weren't guys. I do a lot of draft work outside of Trent McDuffie. These weren't guys that I was like clamoring for or were like, oh, these are going to be great NFL players. And they've come on and they're just fits for what Spags to do. This is like, I hate to say, like, historic draft class in terms of the success that they've gone out and had and the type of defense that they've now been able to continuously have. I think some fans realize we've had it up here in Buffalo with like top 10 DVOA defenses year in and year out. That's rare to do what Spagnuolo is doing and having consistent top 5 defenses year over year. But it harkens back to this class as a big part of that. Like, how historic is it for the Kansas City Chiefs and what they're doing right now?
I think that draft, the draft before it with Nick Bolton and Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, the Chiefs have, like, one of the kind of philosophical switches is like, I think for the Chiefs is like, I don't think it's been, now it's going to sound weird coming from a team that, drafted a cornerback and an edge in the 22 draft class in the first round, but I don't think it's been so tied to positional value as much as just trying to grab as many good football players and consistent football players that love football the last, few drafts. Like, that's kind of been like a piece of it. Right. And so, like, they draft interior offensive linemen, they draft, a linebacker early in 2021, and 2022 they're drafting a linebacker in the top 100, they're drafting a safety in the top 100 and unapologetically grabbing those players. And I think it's just the fact that, like, none of these, like, a lot of those guys that we talked about, Trent McDuffie's an all-pro, and he's an exceptional blue chip player, and they should extend him. George Karlaftis is a fine defensive end. And outside of that, everything else is just role players. But I think their whole thing is like, let's stack role players. Let's stack, rosterable players, because we need rosterable players when we are, paying our blue chips, our Chris Joneses, our Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce's. So they've all fit, they've all made sense. And, I think it's just, not necessarily playing for ceiling as much as, and that was kind of a John Dorsey thing before Brett Beach got there, is there's a lot of, play for the ceiling. And so like you would hit and then you would get nothing else out of your draft class other than your hit. This draft, like they've been able to find guys that stick around, that love football and can contribute in some kind of role for this team. And like the last few drafts have kind of been like the 22 draft, the 21 draft, and 23 has some players in that vein too. 24 has got some players in that vein too. So like, they're able to find some value, up and down the draft, despite picking in the back in the first round. They're just not really able to get a ton of blue chips out of it.
Yeah. One last one here before I toss you back to Greg. I always try to find, when it's my side of the ball, how do you attack this team, right? If I'm the offensive coordinator for the Bills, how am I trying to attack this defense? And I agree, we're not going to get the kitchen sink from Spagnuolo in this one, but it's still going to be a challenge. There's not a lot of ways to attack. Like you said, maybe if we had Keon Coleman and maybe Amari Cooper, we could attack a little bit more on the outside. I don't know that that's going to be the case, but one area that points out, and I'm going to be keeping an eye on Dalton Kincaid's injury here this week that he suffered last week, is if there's a spot, there's some susceptibility of this KC defense. Tight ends have had some success against you guys. Can you speak to what teams are doing to get some success from the tight end position and maybe how the Bills could exploit that?
Yeah, so the tight ends, like especially early in the season, the Chiefs were having a lot of fits with them. Justin Reed, like they try to man up with Justin Reed, and like he has some struggles there. I think the Chiefs has some struggles with bigger body guys anyway. I think when Jalen Watson went out specifically too, that makes it harder to hide the linebacker position too when it comes to coverage. And the Chiefs linebackers aren't really good in coverage. That's a big piece of it. And like, that's something that got exposed, I think, early on in the season. And then this week, I think it was like bigger body receivers, like a lot of comebacks, a lot of hitches, working back to the football, playing at the catch point. And the Chiefs just struggled to do that with their outside corners too. So I think Dalton Kincaid could make a big dent here. If he does play, especially since like the Chiefs don't have a linebacker that can match up with him. Justin Reed's pretty up and down when they're having to play some kind of man coverage or if he's out there. So, I don't know. I think the outbreaking routes, they don't cover. They give them up a lot. They give up a lot of outbreaking routes, and they're comfortable giving up a lot of outbreaking routes out there. So like that's an area of the field that they can definitely win. One other thing I would keep an eye on too, like Curtis Samuel and jet sweeps. Someone like that. Like I think the jet run,
Shakir getting some,
or a little Khalil Shakir action too. Like I think the jet game could give the Chiefs some fits too. It gave them a little bit of problems, like against the Tampa Bay Bucks a couple weeks ago. That's kind of been something like teams trying to run up the middle of the field. The Chiefs do a pretty good job building the wall there, and that's been pretty successful. But they've been able to, teams have been able to expose them on the jet stuff, and I'm curious to see if the Bills kind of get into that bag.
So flipping over to the other side, and you look at obviously this offensive line, the core in the middle is obvious, and seeing Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, Joe Thuney, like just absolute stalwarts. But there seems to be either inconsistency with the play, although Juwan Taylor seems to be rectifying that a little bit. What's going on at the right tackle? Is Wanya Morris healthy? Is that knee going to stay healthy? I saw reports of Donovan Smith getting a phone call. Kingsley Suamataia doesn't seem to be up to the task when he does come in. Is it that, hey, we hope Wanya stays healthy, but what's the backup plan if he doesn't? And how are they approaching this?
Yeah, I don't know about the Donovan Smith scenario. I'm not entirely sure. Like, it doesn't feel like that's going to happen. And like the Chiefs, like, first off, like that's been asked multiple times over the last 4 months, and Andy's kind of said, "Hey, like we like the young guys we have here. They're getting better. They're doing good stuff. We want to keep developing and coaching these guys." So, like he's kind of like pushed back a little bit on that multiple times. But the reason it keeps asking is because the tackle position's been very rough. Wanya Morris has gotten better, and he's looked a little bit more capable over the last few weeks. And him going down for injury was big in this team struggling for a large chunk of this game. Just out of sync over there, with some of the help that they were trying to give Kingsley. Kingsley was not well positioned to handle that help. And like, that's, something Jeff Schwartz was talking about on our post-game show a couple weeks ago. It's like, hey, look, if you're not used to chip help, that can really affect your ability to, protect effectively, because you might overset, you might not be, in the right position to accept the help of the chip, right? And like the Chiefs were trying to throw a bunch of stuff over there to help slow things down, give Kingsley some help over there, and he wasn't handling it well. He was flat out
Well,
missing guys. It was rough.
Zach Allen, Nick Benito, Jonathan Cooper aren't household names, but
No,
those
no.
are good pass
He,
rushers, dude. Like, those are really good players.
yeah, but I mean, he didn't touch Nick Benito. Like, and like that's where it was like a little bit problematic. Like, I don't even know if he touched him all or all game. And so for Kingsley, like it was tough. And I don't know how much development you can get other than live reps of like, okay, this is how you're gonna this is how chip helps you. This is how your body should be positioned for that chip help. This is, don't give up your inside shoulder if you're getting this chip help, those kind of things. And so like I think that was a difficult experience for him. And so like all that to be said, the Chiefs the Chiefs need Wanye Morris back, and he's not like a world beater, but neither was Donovan Smith last year. I don't think people realize that because the receiver conversation was so prevalent in Kansas City that like the Chiefs didn't have a great solution at left tackle last year either. Donovan Smith was very up and down and not particularly great when he was playing at his best. So they've mitigated that before in the past, and Wanye Morris is enough for them to win. A hobbled Wanye, that's a big question, because like Kingsley, man, I don't know if it's going to be in the cards for him in 2024.
So talk about that with the, obviously the abilities to run behind those three in the middle.
Mhm.
It makes it easier when you have so many different guys involved. Carey's going to Carson Steele and Samaje Perine and guys like that. But now you're starting to see glimpses of that older Kareem Hunt and looking a little bit different there. And I don't love the idea of that as a 1-2 punch when Isaiah Pacheco comes back. So one real quick, before you jumped on, Aaron and I shared about the timeline for Matt Milano, and we're looking at probably here in the next 2-3 weeks. What's the game plan right now? It sounds like for Pacheco. I heard that they haven't
Also a
opened that
2022
practice window
draft
yet.
guy, right?
Another 2022 guy. Golly, man. Yeah, I don't think Isaiah Pacheco is going to play this week. Like, and like I know like it
Did
might
they
be
formally open the practice window for him?
I believe there was a report that they were going to, and I don't know if they formally did. I need to go check now. I'm not quite sure if they have or not. They're planning to designate Isaiah Pacheco and Charles Menahue to return from IR this
They
week.
did
So
formally open it today.
okay.
Open it today. So 21 days starting today.
So I wouldn't. My gut tells me that he won't play this week. Just my gut tells me that he won't this week. But they need him, and like I think so. Like I think Kareem Hunt. Like a lot of credit to Kareem Hunt for doing what he's done. He has taken a absolute beating, and this team is unapologetically turning around and handing the football off to him at a clip that we've never seen before. I think Kareem Hunt has 2 games that have exceeded or tied Isaiah Pacheco's career carries in a game. So like they're running the football a lot, and he's good when he's downhill, and he's good, kind of running behind his pads, but not a lot of burst, and the burst is showing less and less. And the thing that Denver did really good that no team really has been able to do is kind of force things to bounce or bend and force him to not get downhill. And that's where things really showed for Kareem. I think of late is like he does not look as bouncy as he did earlier in the year, and he definitely doesn't look as bouncy as he might have a year or 2 ago either, right? So I think this team needs Isaiah Pacheco back at some point, and it'd be good for Kareem Hunt to get a little bit less rest, and maybe they can find a little bit more juice in those legs if they can give him a little bit more rest. But like they've been running this dude into the ground, and I think the last couple of weeks it's shown a little bit more that that he's that he's not what he used to be. Now, to his credit, he's been getting what's blocked, and what's blocked has been very good, especially when they're running downhill with some of their gap power stuff inside. That's been a thing of beauty to watch, and they're just they're getting 3-4 yards a clip. Sometimes they're doing it twice, and then it's a very manageable 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3 to execute. Like that's been a big piece to how this team has kind of played this year. So I don't know. I don't think we're going to get Pacheco this week. If they do, that'd be nice. But yeah, I think they'll try to stretch that out a little bit longer, I think.
So last one before we put you on the spot and ask you what you expect this week. In that receiving game, obviously it's been a revolving door, just constant changes of different people. Obviously, what looked like about to be a breakout season for Rashee Rice and looking fantastic. Then, obviously, unfortunately, the very fluke injury, losing him. You've seen flashes from Xavier Worthy, but a rookie and a guy who isn't going to be your dependable driven piece. There was then a moment where Juju Smith-Schuster looked to be having a resurgence and may come back here and still play a part. But the reports of DeAndre Hopkins' demise, I think were a bit early. And Aaron tried to warn people that, like, no, I don't think he's at the peak of his powers. But I want to credit, I think it was one of the guys over on the Ringer fantasy show was talking about it, that Patrick Mahomes in his entire career has never played with a wide receiver who has A+ hands. Like they play with really talented guys, some really crazy athletes, but guys who just have A+ hands of like, hey, I can catch anything you put in my vicinity. And just seeing him play with that as a new toy is terrifying for people to see. And, there's obviously still, DeAndre Hopkins wasn't an elite separator at his peak physically, and he certainly isn't now. But his hands are still just fine. How has that been, getting used to and seeing a guy that now is reintroducing himself like that?
It's been fun. Watching him get open and watching I don't want to disrespect the receiver room too much, but like an adult in the room, right? Like just a guy that is consistent, that creates. Like, I mean, he's getting open. Like he's done it. Like compared to what the Chiefs have had, like he's actually done a pretty good job on like the red zone stuff, and like he's been creating separation down there. He's got budding chemistry with Patrick Mahomes already, and like Mahomes trusts him, and Mahomes is giving us some opportunities. Like you've seen some of those plays, I think more in the Bucs game, just the kind of trust that he has. But even like, I mean, in the game against Denver last week, they throw a little cover zero, and like he's wide open there on this little corner route, and Mahomes just throws it up, and and DeAndre goes and gets it. Like he's such a huge asset to Mahomes, and like I think they've got time here to get better and improve and kind of build that chemistry together. And you talk about like Juju too. Like I think Juju was the leading receiver for a Super Bowl team 2 years ago, and just having just like capable at the receiver position, it seems to be like the threshold. But man, the idea of Juju, DeAndre Hopkins, Travis Kelce, 3 guys that he trusts immensely on the field at the same time when it matters the most late in the season, like that's I think what you're hoping to build towards, right? And like Xavier Worthy's been very up and down, but like a guy that can help create space for them with the vertical stretch ability, like that can't be overstated either. So like pieces are coming together in the passing game, and DeAndre Hopkins, man, like I'm so geeked to see this guy over the course of the rest of the season. Like I think this is just like I think he could really change how this team does business, and it's been very fun early return so far for sure.
That sounds horrible. I
hate you guys.
I hate everything you just said. Yeah. All right, you know the drill. Let's put you on the spot here. Our friends over at BetUS, I think rightfully have it as pretty much a pick 'em that the Chiefs are a slight favorite on the neutral field. In Buffalo, they have it as Buffalo -1. I love giving Patrick Mahomes points. That never comes back to bite anyone. He does terrible as an underdog. What do you expect to see this Sunday? Give us a score prediction.
Oh man, so like I said, like this game is really big for both teams from a 1 seed perspective, and obviously, like I think like what ultimately matters is how they do in January. But setting yourself up for position in January is crucial, and that's why the regular season exists for these teams. I think this is a tough one for the Chiefs. I tend to think that look, the Chiefs aren't going to show much, and like I don't think that's the reason that I'm picking them to lose this game, but I just think that like this is a big game for Buffalo. It's a big game for Buffalo at home. When you're looking at like just the outlook for the Chiefs, like there's not many places for this team to lose games. The Chiefs don't have like the full capacity of this team back yet. They're not going to have the Amenahue, the Pacheco. We'll see what happens, with the Juju Smith-Schuster this week. But I like the Bills in this game in Buffalo. I think this is the first loss for the Chiefs this season. I think it's been coming. I think, like the last couple of weeks, like you've seen some things that tell you maybe like a loss is coming down the pike. I mean, they pretty much lost that game last week.
There's almost like a small sliver of relief to it in that, like, there's a weird pressure that goes along with it, especially when you've banked as many wins. Like, there's no false expectation. It's not like this is some paper tiger. Like, obviously this is an incredibly talented, good team, but when there's so many of those, there's almost a weird relief in the fact of, okay, all right, good, now we can still, hey, let's go 16-1 or whatever it might be. It's not like it all of a sudden is some death knell.
No, I think this is one of those classic Chiefs Bills game that plays very similarly the way it always has. It's like a 24-21 score for me personally. Like, I think that's about what I'm looking at. I think the Bills win this one, and then the pressure's on the Chiefs a little bit, which I'm sure if the Chiefs, I'm not sure Andy Reid would hate a little bit of pressure down the stretch, right? And things getting a little bit tight there, and the Bills having that tiebreaker on the Chiefs. So I think
if anybody believes in conspiracy theories, I can promise you which outcome the NFL prefers.
Would love
Netflix ones.
Well, because if the Chiefs win this game, not only does nothing really matter for them anymore, the Bills have a 5-game lead in the AFC East. So if you're down by 3, basically, because 2+ games plus the tiebreaker to the Chiefs, where the number 1 seed is just not even feasible, and you have a 5-game lead in the division, you're going to get to like 3 games out and be like, all right, well, anybody who's dinged up, I guess we'll rest you too. Like, it's just super, super weird for both teams in both directions, where you have the 2 most important teams in the conference. Nothing matters for like a 3 or 4 week period. So if you're a conspiracy theorist, I promise you which result the NFL prefers down the stretch. So, we'll see where it comes in.
I'm telling you, big Netflix wants it too, right? Like big streaming wants that one as well. So, like, I don't know. It feels like this is a loss for the Chiefs. And I will say, like, the one caveat, like, if the Chiefs take this Broncos result as like, man, we shouldn't have lost that game. We didn't play our best football
together now.
If they use that as the wake up call without the L in the column, like, this could be, that could add a little something there too for this team. But, like, I think it's close. I think it's another one of those fun classic games, and we'll see you guys in January.
Yep.
That's it.
All right. Tell the folks what's going on at KC Sports Network, where they can come find.
Oh yeah, go check out KC Sports Network on our YouTube channel. You can kind of see the other side of this thing. We'll be doing some live. I won't be on the game preview edition this week, but Matt Hamilton from FanDuel Up and Adams Show joins us every Wednesday. So it'll be Maddie Lane, who you've probably seen on this channel as well. This week they'll be getting ready for that game. You go check everything else out on KC Sports Network's YouTube channel.
Love the work you guys do, man.
Appreciate you so much.
Hey, it's all love here, man.
We'll talk to you again in January.
That's exactly right. Just Greg, make sure you forget to cook a steak before the AFC Championship game, please.
Not
I don't need victory assured in that situation. That's all.
Okay.
All right, appreciate you, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Yep, see you guys.
Oh, awesome. And like you said, KCSN is the cover one of the Chiefs, and it's so cool to have another independent network like that has just flourished in the way that they have. And it's how's the video, the GIF go that it's like, I've seen what you've done for other people, and I want that for me. Like, just they were so similar of a fan base that went 50 years without a championship, so loud and passionate and dedicated, and so similar to Buffalo. And now they're obviously celebrating one of the top dynasty runs in football history. Just I want that for me. I want that.
I want the hate he's getting. I was talking to him all week about Ravens fans and Bengals fans coming in like, oh, you guys don't have a real win. And it's like, dude, you're sitting at 9-0 and you have multiple Super Bowl rings. Like,
Okay.
Tell them to kiss the rings and F off. Like, who
You know,
cares?
like I want so badly to be in a position where everyone's mad about the
Yeah.
wins we don't deserve. Like
Correct.
I want that
Yeah.
so badly.
Yeah.
I'm so jealous.
Totally.
All right. So again, if you liked the pick that Kent shared, he thinks the Bills are going to squeak this one out 24-21. Go over to our friends at BetUS, use promo code YouTube150. You can get up to $2,000 as part of their promotion with 150% bonus on their first deposit and 125% bonus on their second and third deposits. Again, use promo code YouTube150 over at BetUS. Aaron, we've debated a couple different things. We shared another little sprinkle of here to help with our guy Matt Milano. We've gone through what does our friends at William & Tar Law Offices deserve? Where do we need to pump the brakes and calm people down with some of the things that have been going around the fan base lately?
I'm going to be quick with this one. If you follow me on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it these days, you'll know that I've been already sort of pumping the brakes on the concerns about the Buffalo Bills run defense. I just don't see it as a huge concern, Greg. This one is such a weird one because it's a feels like. Eric and I always talk about this perception versus reality a lot of the times isn't always aligned. And I agree with some of the concerns that fans have and like, hey, certain teams you can't allow, like the Ravens, what the Ravens did to the Bills.
That's a horrible performance.
Ravens are doing that to pretty much the entire NFL. And that's my big thing is whenever I see a problem, I try to zoom out and see, is this just a Buffalo Bills problem? Are we over analyzing our own roster and expecting perfection across the board? It's a flaw for sure within the Bills team. But when we look at DVOA, which I love, and I will post it in the show notes. If you don't know what DVOA is, I'll post it everywhere. Anyone can read the explainer on their website. The Bills, even with what Jonathan Taylor did in that first half, they went from 5th in the NFL they went from 6th rush defense in the NFL last week to 5th this week. So they're top 5 run defense in the NFL, according to advanced metrics. And when you look at things like success rate, they're top 10, total EPA, they're 12th or 11th in the league right now. So this is the top half of the league, top 5, depending on the metric you pick. Now, if you look at yards per carry, which I broke down with the Jonathan Taylor had a 58-yard run and a 19-yard run. And so his yards per carry were like 5.4 yards per carry, but he didn't run for 5.4 yards.
That was 2 successful runs on 2 field goal drives.
Correct. And that has been the story of the year for the Bills is they do give up some of those. We saw it against the Jets. They gave up a huge run to Breece Hall. Taylor Rapp stops it. They hold them. Right. Like, and maybe that'll bite you at some point. Maybe you're playing with fire with the bed, but don't break.
It did with Derrick Henry. It did.
Yeah.
Like, that's fine. It did bite them with it.
And again, though, when you look at what Baltimore's doing to the whole league, that's consistent. And the Bills still played them good, and it didn't impact their advanced metrics on this. And so overall, I think the Bills are doing a good job. They'll give up some explosives, but that's been the story of this year is they're willing to give up some of that in trade for some of the havoc plays that they're getting, stops, tackles for loss. They're still one of the best stuff rate teams, power success. You're not going to run up the middle on them on those 3rd and shorts. Heck, man, they're getting turnovers for downs on some of these short yardage things. So there's some issues in the run game, but I don't think it is this giant, huge concern that is just bleeding out the team. It feels frustrating when teams are able to run on them, but ultimately they are able to adjust within the game and kind of slow some of that stuff down, which is a kudos to the coaching staff and the defense themselves there. But I think it's a perception versus reality. I think people need to pump the brakes a little bit that this is a good defense overall and a good run defense.
Yeah. And the only piece I want to add is that this weekend was a perfect synopsis where Jonathan Taylor not only had that big run, he hit the big run early.
Yeah.
So then you end up spending the rest of the game in this like trapped anxiety where it seems like he's about to do it again over and over and over again. And he doesn't, but it feels like he's going to. And we just saw him do it earlier, so he could any moment. And then all of a sudden the game's over and you realize, we talked about in the postgame show, that he had 5 carries for 7 yards in the second half. The rest of the game beyond that, even giving him the 19-yarder, he had 20 carries for 56 yards.
Yeah. As long as the Bills like ran up the score, It was still a
Yeah.
7-point game late into the third, so
Yes,
they
it was
could
a
have
one-score
gone.
game for a
Yeah.
ton of that game that
Yeah.
they were within there, and they had that opportunity, and the Bills kept shutting it down. So, do I and Eric showed it great. Like, I love the fact that they let teams show their best stuff early so that they can tweak and adjust and clamp down later? No, like I'd love if you could find a way to also slow it down early too, but we've done that. That's what happened in the Jacksonville game. That's why that was 47-10. But you even look at some, we let Tennessee get a little bit of something going, then completely clamp them down. We've had a ton of games like that where, yeah, I love that. That's right now our go-to is that, hey, we kind of play pretty vanilla, see what you got, let you show your best stuff, and then when we clamp down, you can't do anything. No, and that, I love it that our second half defense is basically the 2000 Ravens and that we just destroy everybody then. But you're playing with fire, and you do set up situations like that Ravens game where all of a sudden, like, hey, we let them get too much of a head of steam and now we can't pull it back. But we've talked about that multiple times. That trick play in that game, if the Bills go down to score on that and it's 21-17 or 17-21, but we're within there, all of those here we go again anxiety, feelings on that Ravens side, man, we're going to blow another double-digit lead. I think they would have come back and won that game. And again, it's easy for me to say
They would have had
they
a
got
puncher's
blown out.
chance.
They would have been in that game very, very much. So it's just one of those things where none of us are trying to say that we're a great run defense. I don't think we are, but it being our biggest fault doesn't mean that it's some huge death knell that's about to be the downfall of the team.
Yeah.
The thing that we're the least good at, we're still better at it than a lot of teams.
Yeah.
And our second half run defense is exceptional.
Yeah.
And it can be something that is a flaw because something, every team has a flaw in the NFL, and still not be that big of a concern and be something that is okay being our flaw, because there's no team that is just, running away and destroying everybody.
And in terms of the league's not great at run defense right now.
Yeah.
And so
everybody kind of chooses it.
The Bills are still one of the better teams at stopping the run, and there's going to be some teams, there's matchups coming up that are going to look real bad, and people are going to yell at me that, oh, see, I told you. But like, San Francisco's probably going to run on them. Detroit Lions are probably going to run on them. They're doing it to everyone. And so that's the big thing for me, is the pump the brakes is really not even so much about the run defense. It's, we got to zoom out sometimes,
the anxiety about the run defense.
Yeah, well, and just see what's the NFL look like? What's the landscape of the NFL look like? And what are teams doing to each other? And how are they counterbalancing it? The Bills aren't perfect. They're gonna give up some to some teams, but teams are doing that to other teams. It's a matter of, more times than not, are you gonna win, even in spite of your flaws? And the Bills are right now.
Yeah. All right, so let's flip it back. Let's put ourselves on the spot here.
Yeah. I think you went last week.
I did. Again, our friends at BetUS, they are sharing with us that, again, it's basically a pick 'em. They have the over-under here at 46.
Yeah.
Kent had it at 24-21. I think that's a reasonable window. What do you have as your pick for a score prediction for this week?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Ken said, and kind of what you were saying too. Like, the league really definitely wants this to be a Bills victory here. It's much more interesting. The storyline's better. I can't pick it, Greg. I can't right now. Just until Casey loses, the way they're playing, they're finding ways to win, even when they're playing imperfect football. I don't think they've played their best football, which is really terrifying to me. And we talked about they're getting healthy later, so I'm pretty scared of this Chiefs team. I think the Bills can win. I think if you ran this through a simulation, they probably split. I would even say it's like 50-50. And that's kind of what BetUS is saying here.
We won 4 or 5 times out of 10.
And I hope that I'm wrong here, but I've got it Kansas City 20, Bill 17. I think this is going to be an ugly game. I think there's going to be turnover kind of galore here. I think the Bills are going to struggle to move the ball. This is a very good defense. They're very solid. We're out some of the things that I think would help the Bills in a game like this, with Amari Cooper, with Keon Coleman on the outside. I think that's going to be a concern. If Dalton Kincaid can't go, another big concern for me. One of the Bills' strengths, running the ball. I don't know how they're going to be able to run the ball super successfully against this team. I'd love it if they can open it up, but they're really good at stopping the run. If we want to talk about a really good run defense, Kansas City is one of the best in the NFL right now. And so lots of concerns of how we match up with them at this moment. But I think full strength healthy into the playoffs, it's a much better matchup for the Bills. But I think it's going to be a little bit ugly, slow start, not a lot of points, a close game. But I think at the end, KC just edges out and finds another way to win a game. And it doesn't feel good. Bills fans are not going to feel good. It's bring up those old feelings again.
So I do think it's close. I do think it's, back and forth, last one to have the ball. I think Denver just showed the model. Like, you have to be there ready to score on the last play of the game with zeros on the clock and no time left. He is Dracula. He is Jason Voorhees. He is Michael Myers. Like, you have to kill him all the way dead. And that they had it, and they showed, even when it looked like everything was set up right, they're still ready for that one more jump out of the, out of the coffin, ready to get you one more time. I think I agree with Kent's logic. I think that they've been on the verge of this for a while. I think the game matters a tiny bit more for Buffalo. I don't actually believe in conspiracies and think the league is going to rig anything for the Bills, but there are factors where there are lots of parties in play that it benefits them for the Bills to win this game and for both of these teams to be like in the running neck and neck as the season goes, and not like a significant gap between them that kind of ends both teams' regular seasons. And I think the Bills eke this out. I think it's crazy back and forth. I think that it's maybe a weird score, maybe like 26-23, something kind of fluky. Maybe we see another heroic moment from Tyler Bass and give him a chance to reemerge in that sense. The one piece I do think we're going to get, I think Amari Cooper is going to play and is going to matter. I think we see Amari Cooper and that he's going to be out there. And I think if he's not, I do think that's a significant one, because I think they're going to take it easy with Dalton Kincaid. Obviously, we already know Keon Coleman's out. There's a lot of pieces that we're still trying to kind of claw back together here. But I think the Bills find a way here. I think it makes it interesting down the stretch. I'm not sure it'll matter to get the 1 seed. I think there's a lot of games. The rest of our schedule is way tougher than theirs. I think we drop more than they do the rest of the way, even if we beat them. But I do think this makes it a little more dramatic and a little more exciting.
That's fair. And we should probably preface that we are recording this and Bills will have practice on Wednesday. So I'm assuming Cooper might not play, but we could know more tomorrow after practice. Correct. And when Sean McDermott talks. So some things could change by the time you're listening to this, but we're going under the assumption of where things were today.
Yeah. So again, this was always awesome to have the guys from KC Sports Network on with us. One of the most fun games we have every year. This is by far the biggest game in the league this week, and one of the biggest games this year. Very likely AFC Championship game preview type game.
Hope so.
Everyone's going to be watching. It's going to be in that 4:00 window with not a lot competing against it, and everyone watching this. And that's fun that our team is one of those games that everyone is looking forward to. And I do think there's this year maybe a weird little bit of people rooting for the Bills. I think people want to see the Chiefs get knocked off. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think they've kind of become the villain a little bit. There was a lot of fun around them for the first bit. I think they've kind of started to become the villain here. So that's also a little piece of it that we'll see. Yeah. Any final things for the people?
You know what? Follow Greg Tompsett on Blue Sky. I got him over there. Yeah. I've annoyed him. I'm coming for everybody. I'm going to get everybody over there.
You wore me down.
You can follow me too. It's the same Aaron Quinn 716. I'm everywhere. Any social media you want, come follow me. We're everywhere. But I've dragged Greg there today, so he's also on there. So follow him too.
I am there. You could find me. I don't even know like how it works. I don't even know what to tell people.
It's Twitter. It's Twitter from 2010. If you were on Twitter,
I'm at Greg Tompsett. I think I'm at Greg Tompsett.
It's at gregtompsett.bluesky.social. But just search his name, you'll find him. I promise. Come talk to me. If you find me, I'll get you to find Greg.
Yeah. All right, guys, we appreciate it. So on behalf of our awesome team here with Chris Kepner and Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. Our friends over at BetUS want me to remind you to please gamble responsibly. Enjoy yourself over there. Have some fun. But on behalf of our fantastic team and our sponsors, William & Tara Law Offices, we appreciate you very much, and we are out.